Americans, and that's what I consider myself, common, ordinary Americans, have got to face certain terrible realities which are contrary to the establishment's view of our country, our Constitution, the way our government is conducted, and so on. We have to face these things.
Or just submit to tyranny.
One way of saying it in a few words, I say it prior to every election on my television show, even though we've had important candidates on our show. By the way, I ask each candidate that comes on my show, even for candidates for governor and so on, what are you going to do about the CIA flooding Chicago, dope into the United States through Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only a local figure, Mr. Skolnick. I don't know anything about the CIA. The second question is, sir, if you become governor or county board president, what are you going to do to tax the sacred cows of America, like the Rockefellers, the Mellons, the Morgans, and the Marshall Fields,
mm-hmm.
who, because of corruption, pay no taxes whatever?
Mm-hmm.
They never answer. I've never gotten an answer in the almost 10 years that the show is being run. We've had some important candidates. By the way, after some shows, I asked the candidate's press agent, why do these candidates tolerate somebody with as big a mouth as me? And guess what they've told me off camera? Mr. Skolnick, if they can survive you, they can survive anything.
I see. So you're helping them get elected, huh?
You've got a big audience, Mr. Skolnick. You've got a very big mouth. And there is a question whether your mouth is bigger than the opposing candidate.
That's an interesting, an interesting.
I says, that's what they've told me off camera, and I don't know whether to be insulted or flattered. I have never figured it out.
Well, maybe a little of both.
Okay, now let's get to the bigger picture, which is not a joke. Prior to every election, I go into a discussion with whoever I can put on as a guest, third-party candidates and so on, that the American aristocracy, people identified like in Ferdinand Lundberg's book, The Rich and the Super Rich.
Mm-hmm.
What he left out of his book, unfortunately, is that these people believe in the bullet, not the ballot,
mm-hmm.
but their press organs.
Mm-hmm.
What I and a few others call the monopoly press,
mm-hmm.
keep telling us, you got to vote, you got to do this, you got to participate in participatory democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if somebody does get elected or prominent in America,
mm-hmm.
And opposes in some way,
mm-hmm.
by psychology like JFK and so on,
mm-hmm.
they're blown away.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy,
mm-hmm.
John F. Kennedy Jr.,
mm-hmm.
they are blown away. So what is the bottom line? The aristocracy believes in the bullet, not the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
What do I offer over a period of years to the broader picture to explain that?
You must go
well, let's start
pretty deep.
With the death of Abraham Lincoln on Good Friday, right after the close of the Civil War.
Great place to start.
There was a certain element, including the Rothschilds and others,
mm-hmm.
Including members secretly in Congress,
mm-hmm.
who were speculating on the crops in the South.
Mm-hmm.
That if there was a strict and heavy-handed administration of the South being vanquished, that they would not return to farm production, and therefore cotton and so on needed in England
mm-hmm.
Would be way up in price, and they as speculators would make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
If Lincoln, on the other hand, would bind up the wounds, put the country back together as a nation,
mm-hmm.
and farm production resume in the South, cotton and other things, the price would go down, not up,
mm-hmm.
and they would lose their speculation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the result is that, and by the way, part of that is in a book that was well circulated briefly in the 70s and became a movie as well, called The Lincoln Conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It included so-called friends of his in the publishing industry
mm-hmm.
In fact, most of his cabinet members and top officials of the federal government under Lincoln
Mm-hmm.
were press lords.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And John Wilkes Booth wrote a letter to a Washington newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and even after that newspaper, and that was on the afternoon before he killed him in Ford's Theater,
Mm-hmm.
that Lincoln's own people were interested in killing him.
Mm-hmm.
That letter was kept secret, according to the book Lincoln Conspiracy, for 113 years
Mm-hmm.
by the descendants of those that ran that Washington, D.C. newspaper. And so John Wilkes Booth pointed out some tremendous realities there.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, there were these other details. But there was the death of Lincoln was financial. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The guard and others that did not guard him,
Mm-hmm.
some of them ended up taking refuge in the Vatican.
Uh-huh.
And there were books after the Lincoln assassination accusing the Vatican of being involved,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the Rothschilds. But
Mhm.
that
August Belmont and
yeah,
others.
August Belmont was the name, was a pen name, was a assumed name for one of the Rothschilds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lafayette C. Baker was the head of what is now called the Secret Service, and his diaries, which I mentioned in the Lincoln Conspiracy,
Mhm.
shows that he was a plotter.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the history of presidents assassinated, and I'm going to go into that, the Secret Service was complicit. They
Mm-hmm.
certainly were complicit in Dealey Plaza.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No question about
The
it.
head of the Secret Service at that time fled to Ireland and beyond, so that he couldn't be questioned too much about what went on in Dealey Plaza. And that's where I fault some of my fellow assassination researchers. They don't go into this nitty-gritty. They keep talking the bullets went this way, they went that way.
Mhm.
They came down from the book depository, they went that way, they went this way.
Mhm.
I talk about the broader picture
Mhm.
of the defect in the fatal defect in
Protection detail.
the American Republic.
Oh, I see.
Fatal defect. Because you see, a lot of people talk about the Civil War, and I could say a lot about it. They say, oh, it was about slavery. It was not. The British wanted to divide up the country.
Mm-hmm.
The British, I talk about it on our television show.
We were still a colony to the British back in the 1800s. In their
there's a
mind.
few things we've got to point out,
Mhm.
and if some people think that we're departing from the subject matter, they better think twice.
Mm-hmm.
Since the War of 1812, the British have been trying to take back this continent as a British colony. Our current president, Clinton, is a Rhodes Scholar,
Mm-hmm.
went to Oxford on their behest. The Cecil Rhodes Trust, it is not a secret but seldom mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
is pledged to the overthrow of the American government
Mm-hmm.
and the return of this continent to British colony rule.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have a president twice inaugurated took an oath to support the Constitution, but previously took an oath to the Cecil Rhodes Trust, pledged to overthrow this government.
Mhm.
So there's a British angle to it.
Absolutely.
By the way, the 1812 overture of Tchaikovsky is the opening music of our show with the cannons booming.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So that ought to tell you something.
Yeah.
Now, why am I bringing this up? Because there are some little-known details
Mm-hmm.
that are left out by assassination researchers who do not wish to see the bigger picture of the defect of the American Republic.
Mm-hmm.